Escorts of Reddit. Who was the weirdest client you've ever had? One of my ex-girlfriends had this guy offer her $800 to kick him in the balls. Just once, in public. She declined. I'm not sure why. It's a good way to get charged for assault. OC had leagues of texts and emails from him literally begging for it. I doubt any charges would have stuck. Charged but it doesn't stick is still charged, and a bad time. If I get a lawyer for a good price it'd still be worth whatever turns your crank. Apparently afoot. I don't think you can legally consent to being assaulted. What if he had to have his testicles removed due to severe injury? MMA is a thing, and there are plenty of states with right to fight laws, plus plenty of states on verbal and written contracts like texts asking to get blasted in the nads. MMA is a sanctioned sport with its own governing officials. That is a level of protection over the combatants. I'm skeptical of your other claim. Kind of a twist answer to the question. My boyfriend's rumored was an escort. She was having a slow day, so she didn't have any out calls. She didn't get contacted all day, except by one absolute weirdo, who asked if she could collect her used condoms for the day and leave them in a garbage can in the bathroom, so he could take them home. He was willing to pay $50 a condom. My boyfriend and I were both home. Didn't have a whole lot to do. Wouldn't have minded beer money. She asked if we were willing to take care of the job for her. Needless to say we made $100 that day. She kept $50. Sounds like an easy way for a serial killer to leave false evidence. Seriously, ''S boyfriend is an absolute moron. Never give a well-preserved semen sample to a stranger. What is your life? Saw username. Clearly you know a thing or two about semen laws. My bad. How well versed is he on bird law though? Probably what he regrets most. That was his case. The high profile bird v the state. Not me, but a friend of mine is an escort/cam girl. Maybe not super weird, but the guy asks her to wear a thong over panties all day and then send said thong to him. He said he likes the smell, but only wants a hint of smell. She finds it funny that the guy wants to get kinky and weird, but not too kinky and weird. Sorry to hop on this, but the not too kinky part reminds me of this story which I've told before. I used to escort. I'm a guy, and did it with other guys, and for a while I had an ad on a site that was a mixture of dating profiles with a few escort profiles. The escort profiles were marked fairly clearly, but a lot of people still didn't get it. One time while traveling in New York City a guy messaged me to poop on him. I wasn't necessarily against it. I would eventually have to anyway. I'd make some cash, and as long as I didn't have to, like, touch it after, fine. So I asked him when he wanted as I was concerned about being able to perform, and he offered up the immortal, whenever you got a big log for me bro. So I let him know my pricing. And he's immediately shocked and angry that I'm an escort, which he apparently hadn't noticed, and he says I could never do something like escorting. Even years later it's still funny to me that he believed his thing was perfectly normal and that I was the freak in this situation. Reminds me about a lovely Dan Savage story. He was doing a piece on bestiality and interviewed someone who had married his horse in a state where such practices are legal. He asked if he had married a male or female horse and the man angrily shouted, "I am not a homosexual." Former male escort. I mostly had great clients, but my worst was a client who was trying to inject drugs into himself in front of me, something I was emphatically not participating in and not comfortable with. He couldn't find a vein and was just bleeding profusely out of his arm. My pants were down around my ankles. He's bleeding. There's a TV show playing which is a series of almost Lynchian interviews with aging residents of a dying rural Canadian town, and then his mom walks in. I wish I could say I learned my lesson and never saw him again, but I did, and his mom burst in again. I had weird clients, but the weird guys are mostly kind of boring stories. Like I had a guy whose I stomped on for like an hour. Fantastic client and actually very cute. He was like 21, or a guy who wanted me to control his social media and post embarrassing things about him if he didn't pay for my gym membership every month. He lived across the country and we never met. Just an absolute gem. I did a lot of fisting too, and one guy who liked that was chief of staff for a mildly well-known local politician. It's mostly the guys who did f***ed up annoying stuff, often involving drugs, that are actually good stories. Like this one guy who passed out in the hotel room, yelling, moments after I arrived. I scanned the room and was immediately able to ascertain he dosed himself with tons of GHB. So I posed as a guest at the front desk and said I heard a strange noise coming from his room that sounded like a medical emergency, then booked it out of there. He thanked me via text from the hospital. Never paid me. Sorry, how do you stomp on a like? Have him lay sideways and stomp it into the floor? Stomp it into his balls? How hard? How does the survive? So many questions that IDK if I want the answer to. Friend of mine that was an escort got offered 10k to suck off a guy's dog while he watched. She turned that one down thankfully. A guy I used to work with always spoke of the time he went to party up in some town in Vermont. He said that at the place there, people passed around pics of a lady that years before sucked a dog for a truck. He also said that he'd be glad to take me there to party and I would easily find some random with which to hook up. Was it at least a decent truck? I'm picturing some beat up rust bucket. It has been quite a bit of time since I was told. I believe it was a decent truck. Yeah, no, I've always wanted to hire a group of escorts and make them play Dungeons and Dragons. No funny business, but someone will play the cleric. Any idea what that would cost? A couple of things. One, this is a hypothetical, and I'm not going to hire people to play D&D. I just find the idea funny, and I'm surprised it hasn't been done on a comedy program. Rich nerds filling out their group on short notice. To the Loch Ness Monster used to play in one of my groups. He ate all the pizza and clogged my toilet. Fuck that guy. 3. I've already got a gaming group with 6 people in it. We've been playing for almost 10 years. I actually really like playing the cleric. I like being able to deny people healing when they have been rude to me. I made my people pay me for heals. Then they tied me to a post outside our castle gate and left me there. Were your initials EA? My name was Yortle the Tortle. Not me, but a friend of my ex was a professional, as she called it, just outside Reno. When I knew her she was pushing 40 and had been out of the business for 10 years. But my favorite story of hers was when she was paid $10k to accompany one of her regular guys to his 20 years high school reunion. He bought her a ticket and flew her to Texas. Her job was to basically act as his girlfriend for the reunion, complete with backstory. She said they had sex once on the weekend, but that he basically went around to all the people there introducing her to them. He wasn't even a well-off guy. He sold used cars for a living and took out loan to finance the trip, just so he could pass off a hooker as his girlfriend at his 20-year reunion. Oh, and during the reunion, she f***ed his best friend because she thought he was cute. So this guy's best childhood friend hooked up with a woman he thought was with his best friend girl. I'd have loved to see that come to light. I wouldn't really say this one's weird, more just profoundly depressing. I think I'd commit the old Sudoku before ever dropping that low. I must commit, Subaru. Don't bother, you'll just respawn. It's what makes a Subaru. After all, what you don't get and stay. I'm still crying for M in 2019. I wasn't a physical escort, but more of an emotional camgeral escort. I had 4 consistent customers I had over a span of 2-ish years that would vent to me, talk about their day and life. It was honestly kind of like having friends, but friends that would want to see me semi-naked sometimes. I wouldn't call this weird honestly, but I had a very sweet consistent customer who was a closeted transgender. She didn't have much confidence in her body, but the kicker was that she was about my skin tone and our hair was fairly similar. Mine was just a little shorter. She would buy pieces of lingerie and outfits for me to wear and send them to my PO box along with a PayPal payment ranging from $100-$250. I would model pieces for her over Skype, then we would talk about her hormone therapy and self-confidence, etc. After a while I felt bad for taking her money because despite modeling underwear, she never really asked for anything inherently sexual. Fast forward about 2 years ago, I checked up on her and turns out her family accepted her and she was fairly passable. She seemed very happy about herself and I'd like to think that I had some hand in that. This is actually quite wholesome and beautiful. I thought so too. I mean, all my regulars had their quips and each had their own stories, but she is the only one I really made an effort to check up on. You have a good heart. A good friend of mine was into escorting while in uni. Her weirdest/saddest client that she has talked about is when a mother paid for her to date and actually please her son. This was all an effort to make the son's father see the son as worthy of a man to continue the family business or something. She once had to be on a family dinner with the four of them. How can I get into being an escort? Lol. Back then she was stunningly beautiful and one older man suggested something for a great deal of money. Word spread around and she has basically been intimate with every single one of the first customer's friends. That is the reasoning behind it. She didn't even realize it until her sister said to her, "Do you realize that you are basically an escort?" Man on street, "Hey miss, would you have sex with me for $10 million dollars?" Lady on street, "Why yes, I think I would." Man, "Okay then. Would you go have sex with me in that hotel for $1? Lady, slaps man, "Hey, what kind of girl do you think I am?" Man, rubbing face, "Well we've already established that. I'm just trying to haggle over the price. Honestly, if I were old, rich, and single, why not?